have the ability to showcase. I mean, that's just me.
Coca has some flaws, of course. Like, I mean, it's been changing over the years. I hear about the heyday, which I know nothing about, but
when it was better, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was better. You know, there's some schools are really great, and I'm not just saying this, but the Ottawa schools actually are really good, and I know a couple of the guys are here. But and then some markets, they just don't get it, and maybe it's about, you know, if you're trying to research this on your own, it's just about putting in the time to finding out which schools kind of do good programming and make sense, and which ones are a total waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Stephen, and I too was the college university booker back 10 years ago, and you know, I think it's a changed animal. I mean, the reality is that Coca has flown the same way as we've seen university colleges flow, which is like reduced budgets, reduced funding. It makes it a much trickier picture, but the same constant obstacle has existed, especially, and I think Ottawa's unique that way, and Stephen's saying that, and I mean this complimentary, but it's unique in the sense that most of these Canadian universities are competing by trying to program entertainment that is also being sold to the downtown core. And it's a mission impossible on some levels, because kids, you know, more often than not don't want to hang out at the university if they have an opportunity to leave the university, and that's where these venues exist. So I think the schools that have succeeded have been the ones that either work in a neighborhood like in Ottawa, where you've got some campuses that are a little bit outside, and you've also got a little bit of a lack of a venue options, which we also have in Toronto, by the way, and you know, and cities like the sort of rural BC and stuff like that. But when you get into the Corp, when you talk to somebody at University of Toronto, York University, even McGill and Concordia for that matter, where their schools are in the heart of the ghetto, they can't compete because there's always a cooler club, there's always a better place to be, and you know, that level of competition is a reality for, especially when you don't have the big glory day budgets, which is what they used to have.
Sure. But on the flip side, there's also schools that live and breathe on their live shows, and kids at those schools will go and pay, you know, a hard ticket to see like your bands play. So on that note, I would encourage, and again, this is just my sole opinion, because you know, over the last few years working with the colleges, I've seen the progression and see what has happened with bands that no one knew and heard of or listened to on like the MySpaces, or heard an EPK played in front of these kids, and these kids fucking just lost their mind. And next thing you know, it's fucking 6 shows deep, right?
I don't know if Jason would agree with me on this, okay? But because we're here sharing information and we're giving you inside stuff. As an agent, personally, I would never recommend a band to play Coca if they are a rock band. Personally, I think bands that kill a Coca are fun, energetic, live shows that grab people, because these kids sit there, and we're a part of it too, and they watch 6 bands a day for 6 days in a row, and there is booze everywhere. And so what ends up happening is you get something that's even remotely sleepy or artistic, in the sense that it's more about the vibe, etc., and it doesn't grab them, and they start talking and they're not paying attention. If you got a funk band, you got a rock band that's like a party band, and you're going to grab people, you can kill. And I'm generally that black and white with my artists, where if you are that type of band, showcase.
I find rock bands will find their way to Alberta.
Right.
Saskatchewan.
Shocker.
Yeah, that's where you guys are going to hit a bit.
Nice. Colin, you touched on it a little bit before about, you know, you're a booking agent, but booking bands is a small part of what you do. Maybe you guys can talk about what the role of a booking agent is as far as the development of a band's career. As labels kind of changed, or how do you kind of fill that role, and how do you develop the career of a band that's just kind of starting out and going forward?
I mean, all 3 of us will agree we're doing more and more each day. And Stephen's probably most like proficient in this area of the independent artist per se. But you know, I mean, we've become the pinnacle of artist careers, in the sense that touring is the main marketing tool for, you know, 90% of our rosters, and even the ones that aren't. It's funny because, you know, I mean, I hate to keep referring to the past, but I will, just because I have it and I think it's valuable to look at. I remember the day that we used to go to meetings at record labels, and we used to sit down, and they would say, here's the album date, here's a single date, here's what we're going to do, here's where we need you to do your thing. And I was at a meeting last week at Universal, and it was just still, every time I'm sitting in those meetings, it gets me, because it was the opposite of saying, okay, what are we going to do? And the president of the label was looking at me going, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And the reality is that there's been just such a massive shift in orientation when it comes to how you market product nowadays, that there is a new push on us. So we've now moved from being a secondary component of an artist's career, in the sense that we would take something that was successful and help them make revenue from it on another level, to a new stream of, we got product, we need people to know about it, and you're the guy that has to make that happen.
Is there any label reps in here, just before I continue?
No, very trash.
Okay, good.
They're behind the post.
Yeah,
Pop out of the woodwork.
labels, and I'm going to sort of touch on what Colin said, they lean on us. And, I think that's just where the state of the industry is. You are Universal, what are we going to do? They look to us for ideas like, are we going to get them the profile dates? What are the tour dates? How many bodies can we put them in front of? They're becoming less relevant, but it's still somewhat of a partnership. But in terms of developing bands, yeah, I mean, it's definitely on the shoulders of the agents, I personally think.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you feel, Steven?
Yeah, I sort of feel like, I mean, going back to the original question of just, was it sort of what else do we do? Or maybe it's
more like how do you develop bands? It's more than just booking the bands. What else do you do for bands? Let's say you take a flyer in a band that's just starting to break out a little bit, you've heard lots of buzz. You take the band and you do more than just book the shows. What do you do?
What do we do?
Or nothing.
I mean, it's weird because
I golf a lot.
I mean, for a bunch of my artists, essentially, and I don't know if you guys will agree, is I'm sort of quasi-manager to a lot of the acts, and there's, I don't know how much you guys know the big difference between agent and manager, but in reality they're completely different. But now that sort of, as the label goes down, and the agent goes up, the agent is sort of becoming closer to manager, and there's just a lot more duties. And as things get bigger, even stuff like merchandise, right? Like we're involved with, on a merchandising level, the percentages and all that has got nothing to do with what we make. We don't see anything about merchandise, and at the same time, the biggest fights that we have with booking the show is about the merch rate and arguing that, which we essentially have nothing to do with. Why do we do it? Well, because we have to, really, because it's just sort of come to that level. So it has little things like that along the way that we're chipping away at.
I mean, like I say, I mean, like Steven said, like we do everything we have to do, because I mean, at the end, as agents, we commission what our artists make, and that's a great exponential in the sense that they can make a lot more if things are done right, and they can make a lot less if things aren't done. And like Steven said, I mean, the merchandising thing, I think that's kind of a backroom conversation a bunch of agents need to have, because we're not making a dime off of that, and that it definitely takes up a boatload of our time, and it's become a major revenue stream for artists. But beyond that, it's like, booking a show is a giant process, and it's an ongoing process, and that's kind of the one thing that friends and family have the hardest time understanding about what we do, because you're on the hook till that show's played. And so from the first day that you call somebody or email somebody and say, I need this date, to the last minute that they perform, God forbid they don't kick the monitor off the stage or spit on somebody or trash a dressing room, you're on the hook for what goes down that whole time, because you got to book the show, make sure the marketing is being done, monitor it, make sure the deposit and the contract are in, make sure your artist shows up on time. And by saying make sure, we're not specifically responsible for it. We don't tour manage, that's another occupation, but we're on the hook for it, because if the artist doesn't play the date, all the work and the time we put into it, and the manager and the label put into trying to make this engagement happen are wasted.
As agents, we could give all the opportunity in the world, but if you guys can't connect to the kids, nothing's going to work out. I mean, labels could do what they want, managers could arm wrestle to whatever, we could give best support spots and best festival dates, but if you're not connecting, your songs don't connect, it doesn't matter. Like, this conversation is going away. I mean, just connecting with the kids, and that has a lot to do with how you perform on stage, your songs, just everything.
Great. Maybe just to touch a little bit on booking agents' fees. What kind of fee structures do you guys use, and has that changed at all in the last few years? Where do you see maybe it going if it has?
Well, I mean, Colin can say where it has been. I mean, I think it's a pretty standard.
Back in the Yeah, exactly.
Is it safe to say it's generally 10% across the board?
Well,
that's sort of a general.
I think it's absolutely safe to say 10%, and there are special circumstances in genres that are accustomed to paying more, and there are very successful artists that are accustomed to paying less. And because it's a percentage, a lot of these major arena acts that you see out touring are probably not paying 10 points. Some of them have flat arrangements.